It was my 62nd birthday, and all I wanted was a quiet evening in my little suburban house, the one I'd called home for 35 years. Picture this, a 2-story place on a sleepy Chicago street with rose bushes out back and a creaky porch swing that still held echoes of my late husband's laughter. I'd imagined a simple dinner, me, my daughter Sarah, her husband Nathan, maybe a few close friends, good food, a glass of wine, and stories about the old days. Instead, I ended up sitting at my own dining table, my hands trembling around a slice of untouched cake as my only child turned my world upside down in front of everyone. The evening started innocently enough. Sarah had insisted on hosting at my place, which I thought was sweet. She'd brought a homemade carrot cake, my favorite, and Nathan was all smiles, pouring wine like he was auditioning for a charm contest. My friends were there, chatting about grandkids and retirement plans, the room warm with candlelight. I was just about to blow out the candles when Sarah stood up, her wine glass raised, her voice cutting through the chatter like a knife. "Everyone, can I have your attention?" she said, her eyes sparkling a little too brightly. "Tonight's not just about Mom's birthday. It's about a new chapter for our family." She paused, glancing at Nathan, who nodded like they'd rehearsed this. "Mom's been so generous. She's giving us this house, her house, to start our new life. Nathan and I are ready to make it our home, to raise our family here. Isn't that right, Mom?" The room erupted in claps and cheers. My friend Linda gasped, "Oh, Eleanor, that's beautiful." Nathan pulled out his phone, the camera light glaring straight at me, recording my every blink. Everyone was staring, waiting for me to smile, to nod, to play along. But I couldn't move. My fork slipped from my hand, clattering onto the plate. I hadn't agreed to anything, not a word, not a hint. Sarah's smile didn't waver, but her eyes locked onto mine, daring me to contradict her. "Right, Mom?" she repeated, softer now, almost a challenge. I forced a smile, my lips tight, and took a sip of wine to hide the panic clawing at my chest. The room moved on, glasses clinking, but I sat there, the air heavy, like I'd been shoved into a spotlight for a role I didn't know I was playing. My house, the one I'd painted with my husband, where we'd raised Sarah, where I'd grieved him alone for 10 years, was suddenly theirs. Just like that? And all I could think was, when did I say yes? That night, as I sat alone in my dining room, the candles burned down to stubs, and the weight of Sarah's announcement pressed against my chest. I kept replaying her words, her smile, the way Nathan's camera caught every flicker of my confusion. Who was I in that moment? I suppose I should tell you a bit about me, about them, so you can understand how we got here. I'm Eleanor, 62 years old, a retired elementary school teacher who spent 30 years teaching kids how to read and tie their shoes. I've got short silver hair now, a little arthritis in my knees, and a habit of talking to my rose bushes out back like they're old friends. My house in the Chicago suburbs isn't fancy, just a 2-story with peeling blue paint and a kitchen that smells like the cinnamon rolls I used to bake for Sarah when she was little. It's the same house where my husband Tom and I danced to old jazz records, where we raised our daughter, where I learned to live again after his heart gave out 10 years ago. I'm not rich, but I've saved carefully, always thinking I'd leave something for Sarah someday. That house, those roses, they're my life's story. Sarah's my only child, 34 now, with her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn streak. She's beautiful, always has been, with long chestnut hair and a laugh that could light up a room. She works as a freelance marketer, always chasing the next big client, always posting her life on Instagram, smoothies, sunsets, you name it. I used to love her ambition, the way she'd dream big, but somewhere along the line, those dreams started coming with a price tag. She'd call me for help, a late rent payment, a car repair, and I'd send the money because that's what mothers do, right? I thought I was helping her build a future. Then there's Nathan, her husband of 5 years, 36, a real estate broker with a handshake that's too firm and a smile that doesn't quite reach his eyes. He's the kind of guy who calls you ma'am, but makes you feel like he's sizing you up. Nathan's always talking about his next big deal, condos, flips, investments that never seem to pan out. He and Sarah met at some networking event, and I'll admit I was charmed at first. He'd bring me coffee, ask about my garden, but lately I've caught him glancing around my house like he's measuring it for sale. That house means everything to me. It's not just walls and a roof. It's where Tom carved our initials into. The porch railing where Sarah took her first steps, where I sat on the stairs and cried after his funeral. I'd always thought I'd pass it to Sarah one day, when the time was right, when we'd talked it through. But that night, as I scrubbed the dessert plates in silence, I realized something. Sarah and Nathan hadn't just assumed I'd give it up. They'd decided it was already theirs. And the way they announced it, like I was just a guest in my own story, made me wonder what else they'd planned without me. The days after my birthday felt like walking through fog. I kept replaying that dinner, Sarah's voice ringing out, Mom's giving us the house, Nathan's camera pinning me in place. I hadn't said yes, hadn't even been asked, but the way everyone clapped, you'd think I'd signed the deed right there. I tried to brush it off, told myself maybe I'd misunderstood, but then the emails started coming. Nathan sent the first one the next morning, subject line, transition plan. It was a spreadsheet, cold and precise, listing dates for me to clear out personal items and a checklist of furniture they wanted gone. My oak dining table, Tom's old armchair, even the rose-patterned curtains I'd sewn myself. We'll need the space for a modern updates, he wrote, like my home was some fixer-upper on one of his real estate listings. Sarah followed up with a text. So excited to make this our home, Mom. Can we come by Saturday to measure for the nursery? Nursery? My heart stopped. They'd never mentioned a baby. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat in the kitchen, the house so quiet I could hear the clock ticking. I opened Instagram, something I rarely do, and there it was. Sarah's latest post. A slow, dreamy video of my backyard, my rose bushes swaying in the breeze, set to soft piano music. The caption read, "Our future home. Thank you, Mom, for the greatest gift." 52 likes. Comments poured in. What a generous mom. You're so lucky. My hands shook as I scrolled. She'd turned my life into her story, and I hadn't even been consulted. I don't know what made me do it, but I started digging through old files in Tom's desk, the one I hadn't touched since he passed. I found it buried in a folder labeled Medical 2022, a power of attorney form I'd signed 3 years ago when I broke my wrist and was in the hospital. Sarah had brought it to me, her face all concern, saying, "It's just to help with bills, Mom. Nothing big." I'd signed it without reading, too dazed from pain meds. Now staring at her name on that paper, my stomach twisted. If she wanted, too, she could use this to claim I wasn't fit to manage my own affairs. I called my lawyer, Diane, at midnight. She's an old friend, the kind who doesn't mind late-night panics. "Eleanor," she said, her voice sharp, "if you haven't revoked that form, it's still valid. If Sarah gets a doctor to say you're confused, forgetful, even just stressed, they could challenge your control over the house. It's rare, but it happens." I felt the air leave the room. "What do I do?" I whispered. "Come see me. Tomorrow," she said, "and don't sign anything." The next night I was locking up when I heard a noise outside, a low murmur, footsteps on gravel. I peeked through the blinds and saw Nathan in my backyard with a man I didn't know, both holding flashlights. Nathan was pointing at the rose garden, gesturing like he was measuring it off. "This could be split for a second lot," I heard him say. "Big profit." My blood ran cold. They weren't just taking my home. They were planning to carve it up and sell it. I stood there, frozen, my hand on the curtain until their car pulled away. That's when I knew. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a plan. I couldn't shake the image of Nathan in my backyard, his flashlight cutting through the dark, plotting to sell off pieces of my life. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table, a cup of cold tea in my hands, staring at the power of attorney form like it was a ticking bomb. Sarah and Nathan weren't just asking for my house. They were building a case to take it, and I'd been too trusting to see it coming. But something shifted in me then, a quiet fire I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't going to let them rewrite my story. The next morning, Sarah showed up unannounced, a bouquet of daisies in one hand and a manila envelope in the other. "Just checking on you, Mom," she said, her voice syrupy, like we hadn't just had that bombshell dinner. She set the flowers on the counter and slid the envelope toward me. "It's a draft agreement for the house transfer. No rush, but Nathan says the bank needs it soon." Her smile was perfect, practiced, but her eyes darted to my face, watching for a crack. I opened the envelope and saw my name typed next to hers and Nathan's, a blank line waiting for my signature. My throat tightened, but I just nodded and said, "I'll look it over." When she stepped out to take a call, I glanced at her purse, left open on the couch. I don't know what made me do it. Call it a mother's instinct, but I peeked inside. There, tucked between her wallet and keys, was a contract, not for moving in, but for selling my house to a real estate firm. Nathan's signature was already on it, dated 2 weeks ago. My roses, my porch swing, Tom's initials carved in the railing, they were pricing it all out like a used car. I snapped a photo with my phone, my hands shaking, and slipped the contract back before she returned. Sarah came back all smiles, chatting about paint colors and nursery plans. "We're trying for a baby, Mom," she said, her hand on her stomach, eyes misty. "This house means so much for our future." But I noticed her coffee cup on the counter, black, no cream, the kind she'd sworn off when she was trying years ago. She wasn't pregnant. It was another lie, and I was done swallowing them. That afternoon I called Diane, my lawyer, and sent her the photo of the contract. Her voice was steel. "They're moving like it's already theirs, Eleanor. If you sign anything, even a text saying you're thinking about it, they'll use it as consent. Shred that agreement and don't respond." I did more than shred it. I started collecting proof. Every text, every email, every Instagram post where Sarah spun her fairy tale about our new home. I froze my bank accounts, changed my passwords, and even started journaling every interaction, time-stamping my thoughts to prove I was sharp as ever. Then came the video. A week after the dinner, Sarah posted it on Instagram, a tearful clip of her standing in my driveway, her voice breaking. "We just wanted a home for our family, but Mom's shutting us out." It was edited to make me look cold, heartless, showing a split second where I'd said, "Please leave," after catching her rifling through my desk. The caption read, "When family betrays you." 4,000 likes in a day. Comments tore into me. What kind of mother does this? Boomer greed at its worst. I read them until my chest ached, then saved every single one. I knew I had to act fast, but I couldn't let them see me coming. So I called Margaret, an old friend who'd retired from real estate and now spent her days painting watercolors in Wisconsin. I told her everything. Sarah's lies, Nathan's contract, the power of attorney. Margaret didn't hesitate. "You need to sell before they lock you in court," she said. "I know a couple looking for a quiet place like yours. Cash deal, no listings, no trace." I said yes without blinking. Over the next week, I played the part they expected. Docile, soft Eleanor. I texted Sarah back with vague replies, still thinking about the house. I liked her nursery mood board on Instagram, all pastel pinks and whites. I even posted a photo of my rose garden captioning it, "Home is where the heart is," letting them think I was sentimental, not strategic. Behind their backs, I was unraveling their plan. Margaret's buyers, a young couple expecting their first child, loved the house. We closed the deal in 5 days, all cash, no contingencies. I bought a small seaside condo in Maine, a place I'd dreamed of since Tom and I vacationed there decades ago. It was simple: wood floors, a tiny balcony, a view of waves crashing on the rocks, mine and mine alone. I hired a mover from church, a quiet man named Joe who didn't ask questions. He packed Tom's records, my mother's china, and a box of Sarah's old drawings from when she was 6, the ones I couldn't bear to leave. I told my neighbors I was taking a trip and asked them not to mention it. I changed my mailing, addressed to a P.O. box in Maine, set my utilities to shut off in 2 weeks, and made sure every step was invisible. The night before I left, Nathan showed up. I was in the living room boxing up photo albums when I heard pounding on the door. "Mom, open up!" he yelled, his voice sharp, not charming anymore. I stood still, my heart racing as he tried his key. It didn't work. I'd changed the locks 2 days earlier. "We know you're talking to a realtor," he shouted. "You can't do this to us. We'll take it to court if we have to." A rustle, then an envelope slid under the door. A legal notice, typed, official, threatening a guardianship review based on my recent confusion. I didn't open the door. I picked up the envelope, called Diane, and added it to my folder labeled Proof. They thought they had me cornered. They didn't know I was already gone. I left Chicago at dawn, the sky still gray, my suitcase wheels humming against the pavement. The house, my house for 35 years, with its rose bushes and Tom's carved initials, was no longer mine. The sale had closed the day before, the money wired to a new account, the deed signed over to a young couple who'd fill it with their own laughter, their own dreams. I didn't look back as I drove away. I was headed to my new condo in Maine, a 4-hour drive to a life I'd chosen, not one someone else had scripted for me. When I arrived, the air smelled of salt and pine. The condo was small, nothing fancy, wood floors that creaked, a balcony, barely big enough for a chair, and a view of the ocean that made my heart unclench. I stood in the empty living room, no boxes unpacked, and let out a breath I'd been holding for weeks, maybe years. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for the next demand, the next lie. I was free. Sarah and Nathan didn't give up right away. My phone buzzed with missed calls. 47 over the first week, voicemails from Sarah crying, "How could you do this to us?" And Nathan's clipped, "We'll settle this legally, Eleanor." Then came a package, left on my doorstep with no note. A framed ultrasound photo, the kind you'd see in a doctor's office, with a card signed S and N that read, "Let's start over." I recognized it instantly. A stock image Sarah had posted months ago on her vision board. It wasn't real. I set the frame on the counter, untouched, and added a photo of it to my proof folder. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, headlights appeared on the winding road to my condo. I watched from the kitchen window as Sarah and Nathan stepped out of their car, dressed like they were going to a gala, Sarah in heels, Nathan in a blazer, clutching a bottle of wine. They knocked, first softly, then harder. "Mom, we drove all this way," Sarah called, her voice breaking for effect. "We just want to talk." Nathan joined in, louder. "You're turning your back on your family." I stood in the dark, hands steady on the counter, and let the knocks echo. After 20 minutes, they left the wine on the step with a label that read, Reconciliation Red. I poured it down the sink, the red swirling like blood against the steel. Their final message came that night from Sarah. You got what you wanted. Hope it's worth losing us. I didn't reply. I screenshotted it, deleted their numbers, and turned off my phone. But the real blow came from others. Texts from cousins, my sister, even old friends forwarded Sarah's Instagram video, the one where she sobbed about my betrayal. Eleanor, how could you? My sister wrote. Family comes first. The comments under Sarah's post were worse. She's hoarding that house for herself. No wonder they're heartbroken. I read them all, each one a needle, but I didn't respond. I'd learned silence was louder than any defense. Then a small light broke through. My nephew Ethan, my sister's son, texted me out of the blue. Aunt Elle, I don't buy Sarah's story. You okay? I replied, safe. Starting over. He sent back a single emoji, a heart, and added, You're tougher than anyone I know. I didn't cry, but I held that message close, a reminder that not everyone was fooled. I'd already taken the final step before leaving Chicago. With Diane's help, I rewrote my will, leaving everything, my savings, the condo, even the silver locket Tom gave me, to the Rose Haven Fund, a charity I created to help older women escape financial abuse. Sarah and Nathan were cut out, legally barred from contesting it. Diane slid the signed papers across her desk, her eyes soft. It's ironclad, she said. They can't touch you now. I nodded, the weight of those pages like armor. In Maine, my days found a new rhythm. Mornings, I tended a small garden, planting lavender and daisies in pots. Afternoons, I volunteered at the community center, teaching reading to adults who'd never had the chance. Evenings, I joined a book club with women my age, their laughter filling the gaps Sarah had left. One night, over tea, I shared my story, and a woman named Clara, 67, reached for my hand. You gave me courage to leave my son's demands behind, she said. I realized then this wasn't just my healing, it was theirs too. A letter arrived from the Rose Haven Fund a month later, confirming my first donation had helped a 70-year-old woman named Ruth leave her controlling daughter. Ruth's note was tucked inside. You gave me a second chance, Eleanor. Thank you. I pinned it to my fridge next to a photo of my new garden, and for the first time in years, I cried. Not from pain, but from something lighter, like rain washing away dust. I think about Sarah sometimes, wonder if she ever saw the lie for what it was. But I don't check her Instagram anymore. I don't need to. My phone stays quiet now, and when it buzzes, it's Clara inviting me for chess or Ethan checking in. The last time it rang, an unknown number, I let it go to voicemail. It was Nathan, his voice low. We're still family, Eleanor, call us. I deleted it, not out of anger, but because I'd finally learned what family really means. One evening, I stood on my balcony, the Maine waves crashing below, a book of poetry in my hands. The wind carried the scent of salt, and I thought about Tom, how he'd smile at this new me, the one who fought and won. I realized home isn't a house, not walls or roses or even memories. It's the place you find yourself, the quiet you build when you let go of what's been breaking you. For me, that's here, in this small condo, with the sea and my own heart for company. And if there's one thing I'd tell you, it's this. Sometimes, to save yourself, you have to walk away. Not with a shout, but with silence, the kind that speaks louder than any lie. Because when you find that silence, you find peace. And that, I've learned, is worth more than any house, any fight, any name on a deed. It's yours, forever, and no one can take it away.